Perceptions and Culture presentation by Jill Ike. Web-based social cognition can be defined as our ability to interpret and use cues online to form an initial impression of someone. The growing use of technology has led to an increasing research exploring the manner in which various social, psychological phenomena are enacted in the cyber world. Today we use technology in almost everything. We use technology to get to know one another through Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and social dating sites. This has become something that is just a social norm in our world. And although there are differences between the two, the real world and online perceivers use some of the same strategies when making first impressions, according to Sabates in 2012. When considering the differences between face-to-face and online interactions, researchers found that those who rated an online partner made less detailed but more intense personality descriptions of their partners than did those who interacted face-to-face. This means the more limited we are to see facial response, we pick up more strongly on personality traits as a whole. How culture relates to our perceptions of others and ourselves. We all see the world through cultural glasses. The lens through which your brain sees the world shapes your reality. If you can change the lens, not only can you change the way your brain perceives behaviors, but you can change the way people relate to cultural differences, according to Julian Borelli. The way we are raised plays a large role in how we perceive others. For instance, the friendships we make will vary from culture to culture in the way that which we are raised. This can range from dependent to non-dependent relationships. Such as in the Western culture, children are more likely to be raised to be independent and self-sufficient. This means that their friendships will also mirror those same traits. The need for constant interaction or reassurance will be less than a relationship from, say, the South African communities. Another example is that some cultures require more personal space, thus leading to a misconception of judgment or bias when these things are not followed. It may be normal for someone to seat several people together closely in a certain culture, whereas other cultures may be more attuned to a wider range of said space. Communication in certain societies is also a factor when we consider culture, which brings politeness differences to the surface. In many countries, it is customary to respond with a greeting and or a smile, whereas in others, this may not be the case. The key here is to benefit from diversity. Everyone sees the world through cultural glasses. It is not about what you see, it's about what you perceive, according to Julian Borelli when he did a TEDx talk in July 2015. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about India versus America culture, for instance, or for example. India versus America are very different. Their cultures range from a wide variety of differences. Everything from being independent to being very reliant. Indians, for example, are way more reliant on other people, whereas here in America, children are brought up to be very independent, just as we talked a little bit about in a previous slide. In Indian culture, there's very much respect for elders. In American culture, we see a little bit less of that. Also, Indians are a lot more competitive, whereas in America, it may be a little less. Also, the family structure in India varies greatly from what we see in America. In America, when we get married, husbands and wives tend to go off on their own and separate themselves from their family, whereas in Indian culture, you can see from this picture that they stay together. It is very customary to see large groups of family members, from brothers and sisters to grandparents, all living in the same household. Also, arranged marriages are way more common in India than obviously they are here in America. Another difference between India and America would be that women dress differently. Here in America, we see women wearing shorts and tank tops and many times provocative clothing. Whereas in India, this would just not be the case. It would be very disrespectful. It's just something that is not socially acceptable there. You see women way more clothed than you do here in America. Also, conversational topics tend to be a lot different in India than here in America. In India, they don't discuss the things that we discuss in America. Political differences, religion, things like that are just topics that would be done privately at home. Where in America, this is something that just happens all the time on social media, on the news, just things that are discussed quite often. Sense of humors can be different amongst Indians and Americans. Also, people in India are very inquisitive. They actually talk a little bit more personally than we do in America about certain topics. Here in America, we wouldn't technically go out on a regular basis and ask people what their salaries are. In India, it's very customary for people to talk about what they make and things like that in certain situations. Also, women would not be basically out in public unescorted. It is not very common in India as well. But if we can take the time to explore and educate ourselves on cultures, we bridge the gap of social differences by understanding one another and then making judgments based on, or rather than making judgments based on our own perceptions. If we take the time to just do a little studying before we go to another country, we stop ourselves from making biased judgments that can miscue our view of people. So give them a fair chance. Learn about other cultures and take the time to get to know what other people believe and why they are the way they are. In the long run, it'll be very beneficial to you, and it definitely will not be a negative thing, but it opens your eyes to other people, their religions, their beliefs, and their ideals, and makes you understand them in a way that you haven't before.